Champagne, big bottle, and hello. Welcome to another episode of the Gilmore Way Podcast. We're Kate and Laura.
Hello. Together this week, as you can see.
Together, yay. And this week, I'm really excited because we're talking about every single instance of someone popping the question on the show. Woo! Little overzealous. Classic.
Yep.
Welcome to Champagne. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about every single proposal in the show and breaking it down.
In the meantime, before we get started, just a friendly reminder to please do all of the YouTube-y things. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, turn on that notification bell so you keep getting updates on when our content is dropping. We really appreciate that. It takes a second. It's just a click, and it really helps us out.
All right. Should we hop into the episode synopses?
We should.
All right. Let's pull them up. So this week, we are talking about episodes 20 and 21 of season 1. So episode 20 is P.S. I Love. Rory is still in her breakup funk, and her treatment with kid gloves from Lane and Lorelai about their lives causes Rory to run away to her grandparents. Lorelai chats with Luke and gets worked up into a froth that causes her to confront Dean about breaking up with a great girl like Rory, and she finally learns the truth about what happened the night of the Firelight Festival. She drives to Hartford to pick up Rory, and they have a chat about how Lorelai wants Rory to be able to recognize and express love and not be so hung up about it because of her mother's love life.
This is followed up by Love, Daisies, and Troubadours. And we see Rory getting back out into the open and reconciling with Dean, going so far as to have an outburst in a town meeting about having something to say and needing to say it through music because she doesn't know how to approach a conversation with him. She also freaks out his little sister Clara by showing up at his door pretending to be a Girl Scout and grilling her for information. Dean eventually shows up at Chilton to talk to her, but when he sees her with Tristan, he almost leaves until she blurts out, "Because I love you, you idiot." Lorelai and Max's relationship is also getting more serious, but Max proposes in a very inappropriate way during a fight, and Lorelai says that's not how you propose. There needs to be 1,000 yellow daisies. Taking her precisely at her word, he sends 1,000 yellow daisies to the inn and then proposes over the phone. But we're left hanging until the next season for her response.
Ooh, yeah, this is a good one to talk about proposals in. Yes. So we're going to do this in a ranking format. It's our first time doing a ranking, so this is going to be fun. So here's your bubbly. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right.
2 proposals.
All right. So we're going to start off with the absolute worst proposal on the show. Oh, and we should also mention that how we're ranking this is we're finding a balance between whether the couple is actually at a good enough place to be engaged and sort of the context from which the proposal arises, and also how cute the proposal actually was, like how well it was executed when it was done. All right. So we're going to start off by talking about the worst one.
I don't think it really, take a guess, but I think we'll all come to the same conclusion. Worst is Lorelai and Max. Egregious in every way.
Just awful. Yeah. Toxic. Bad timing.
Yeah, and we'll start off with how the proposal goes, which is over the phone.
Well, the first proposal happens in person.
Okay, that's
so
true.
It comes out of Max having a bit of a pissing contest with Luke when he shows up to pick up Bert. And he says, I'm always going to be around. And then Max gets territorial and has a fight with Lorelai about how they're having trouble breaking a bad pattern and that they need to do something to change it.
Yeah.
And he says, I think we should get married.
And Lorelai responds appropriately where she's like, hang on, that's not how you do it. That's not how this should work. There needs to be thought put into it. And it clearly wasn't. They were just in the midst of a fight that was stemming from that toxic masculinity that we see leading up to it. And Max is just trying to band-aid the situation and end the fight by just saying, oh, marry me.
Awful.
Come on.
Never do that.
Yeah.
Pro tip, guys. Don't do that.
Just guys, girls, whomever is proposing.
Guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Don't do that.
Just don't propose that way. Give your partner some thought, like the thought and the effort that it deserves, and show them you care. Don't do what Max did.
Yeah. Lorelai even says it, this is not what a proposal should be. A proposal should be magical. It should be, bigger than this. It should be 1,000 yellow daisies, as we mentioned in the synopsis. And in a way, she's right. I mean, it doesn't have to be a crazy, elaborate, event of a proposal. I know that's been really popular the last couple of years. There are even companies that plan proposals that are over the top. You know, you get dancing crowds and parades and just wild things. Like, not everybody needs that or wants that. I personally don't want something that huge.
Nope.
So it doesn't have to be a massive event, but it needs to be more than just, hey, we're having a fight, we should get married to fix it. And Lorelai rightly points that out to him. And he takes her very literally and sends 1,000 yellow daisies to her place of employment.
Which to me is the biggest eyesore ever.
They're just a step up from weeds, really.
Yeah, they are. Like, if I was Lorelai and I was walking into work that day and I saw that, I would just be like, oh, come on. Like,
this is going to be a nightmare to clean up. What am I going to do with 1,000 yellow daisies?
Yeah. Clean up. It's just not fun to look at. I mean, she ends up handing them out to the town, and now the town is just flooded with yellow everywhere. But yeah, I don't also like Max taking her literally at her word and doing that. Like, it was just, I think, more of just like a metaphor for just her trying to say, like, care a bit, put some thought into it. But I don't actually need or want 1,000 flowers.
Yeah. I mean, she was definitely shocked and happy when it happened. But then he calls and, you know, says all these nice things to her. And she just kind of sits there quietly. She doesn't have this immediate desire to say, yes, 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 1,000 times yes. One for each yellow daisy. Yep. And that is our first red flag of the episode. Because when someone wants to spend their life with you and legally tie themselves to you forever, you should go in with an enthusiastic yes.
And if you can't and you're not ready to do so, it just means that you're not ready to be married. Which is why this relationship is just taking top billing for worst ever. Worst relationship ever, worst marriage proposal ever. Everything about it was just wrong. I couldn't even highlight one thing where I would say like that was good, because it was just bad, bad, bad.
Yeah, it was bad from where they were at in their relationship through execution. You know, I wouldn't want to be proposed to over the phone.
Who would?
Like, at least show up. If you're going to send 1,000 yellow daisies, like, show up. I think he did it because he wanted to give Lorelai the space and not like pressure her into it must be yes right now kind of thing. Like, I think he even says take some time to think about it. But again, should you really need to spend that much time thinking about whether you want to say yes to someone you love like that?
No.
And want to spend your life with? I don't know.
No. And just side note, Luke recognizes that this is not right for Lorelai. And, you know, she says, you haven't done any of the legwork that you've done in the lead up to this proposal, or even like saying yes to this marriage to bind yourself to this person. So he rightly calls her out on just why this is wrong and why she shouldn't proceed forward with it.
Yeah. Luke, of all people, is like, are you going to live here? Are you going to live in Hartford? What's going to happen? Where does he keep the coupons?
You got to know where that coupon drawer is.
Exactly. And when Max calls, when I think Lorelai calls Max during Friday night dinner and says, you know, where are we going to live? Where are we going to keep the coupons? And once again, he just sort of like shuts down every concern she has. And they don't have an actual adult, mature conversation about it. And he's just like, are you saying yes?
Yeah. And it's really dismissive of her too. Like, she's raising some very valid points and some valid questions that should be answered before she does. But he just continues to pressure her. And eventually she says, yeah, I guess I'm saying yes, but oh boy, should have been a no.
Yeah. And it's no wonder that she runs away and, you know, leaves them at the altar essentially a few days before they're set to get hitched.
Yeah.
Is that it for Lorelai and Max?
Yeah, just a travesty.
Oh, so bad.
But we can move on to second worst, which for us, and this is, again, our list is something that we conclusively agreed upon.
Yes, it was difficult. We had a few conversations to narrow this list down to what it is.
Yep.
But next up, Lorelai and Chris.
Yep. We'll start out with the first time.
The first time is in season 1 when he just sort of like offhandedly proposes in the kitchen. It's like, I want you to marry me.
Yep. Pretty much almost as bad as Max. Like, there's no thought, there's no care given there. It's just a reckless proposal, and Lorelai deserves better.
Yeah. He had done nothing to facilitate a relationship with her in years. And he just shows up and is like, I think we should get married. I mean, no.
Yeah, and I think it's just because like his life was finally starting to go well for him. His startup was doing okay in the beginning. It seemed like he was getting his life back on track, and that's good, but that doesn't mean you jump right into the marriage bed.
Yeah, exactly. That was ill thought out, and I don't blame Lorelai for saying, you have no idea what it means to be a family, to show up all the time and come home to the same place every night to the same people. He still wasn't ready for that.
No.
I mean, granted, he gets with Sherry soon and is sort of catapulted into that life a little bit, but we don't actually see his proposal to Sherry, so it's not on this list. But we can only assume that it was basically at shotgun.
Yeah, so probably. And just another couple who should have never been married. So
yeah.
But that was the first one. And then we get a second proposal towards the end of the show, again, where Lorelai actually accepts this time. And they end up getting married in France. But Rory's not there.
Yeah. Again, I'm sorry. Flag on the play, Christopher. No. You should know by now that Lorelai doesn't do anything without Rory. And that arguably the biggest step of her life, getting married, especially to her dad, requires her presence. And the fact that you pushed her, after jet lag and a night of bad sleep and very little food, and tried to convince her that this was a good idea, makes this a really bad proposal.
And I think in both instances, too, there was always a lot of pressure from Emily and Richard, from Strobe and Francine, more so from Emily and Richard, just for them to be married for the sake of Rory. And even though Rory is like a grown adult at this point, like there's still that novelty concept that like the parents of this child should be married. And that's incorrect and wrong. Like they were teenagers when, Lorelai got pregnant. She was right not to saddle herself into a marriage then, but she raised Rory on her own. It doesn't mean that you need to end up marrying the father. And I think it was wrong for Emily and Richard to push that on them, and for Chris to like ingrain that so much where he thought like, yeah, that's actually probably proper and right, but it doesn't equate to love and compatibility.
Yes, that's a really excellent way to put it. And not only was there pressure from Emily and Richard and Strobe and Francine, but there was also that sort of societal pressure to marry the right guy, someone of your station in life. A lot of this we get through Emily's perspective on their relationship. So it's not just her wanting Lorelai to marry the father of her child, but also you need to marry this particular type of guy to be considered appropriate in society. And, just the idea of single motherhood and leaving the father out of it is, not appropriate in their world. And so they're facing all different kinds of pressures. And yeah, but to me, it comes down to like just the worst part was no Rory.
Yeah, she had every right to be there, and she handled it well enough. I would have been pissed if I was Rory.
And she forgave her a little quickly, but she did sort of ice her mom out for a while there. And Lorelai had to sneak into Logan's building behind a delivery guy in order to actually have a conversation with her. She wasn't mad that her parents got married. That was actually exciting to her.
Yeah.
But she was mad that she wasn't there. And Lorelai says, I didn't want a chance to second guess it, basically. I didn't want to think, I just wanted to I didn't want to be talked out of it. And I thought that if I gave it that space and came home and then did it, that I would be talked out of doing it. And I didn't want that to happen, which again, red flag.
Yeah.
No, bad.
Yeah. If you think that like with time, you're going to change your mind, it just means that that is not the right person for you. Again, so she's so hastily saying yes because she knows that she's probably susceptible to doing that. And it just means that Chris is not the one.
Yeah. So Rory was right when she said, I would have told you to, maybe think about it and have me there and Suki there and maybe oh yeah, you're right. I would have talked you out of it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they should have gotten married in the first place. And you can kind of see the sheepishness on Lorelai's face when they come home at the very end of French Twist. And he's like, welcome home, Mrs. Hayden. And she's like, great. Oh no. What have I done? Yeah. She doesn't look that happy.
Yeah.
The scenario. And I think it's out of the guilt. And if you feel that much guilt about your marriage, you probably did it wrong.
And it doesn't last long for obvious reasons. So But that's sad too. Like, divorce is a process. It's not an easy thing from a legal standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, and what it does to like your well-being and how hard it can be on, both individuals, but any children that are resulting and have to combat that too. So they should have just thought a little bit more about it. And I would have liked to have seen that and for them to realize like, nope, this is not what we should be doing. But jumping the gun is Lorelai's MO sometimes.
Yeah, the impulsivity of Lorelai and Christopher both just really combined into this perfect storm of stupid in Paris. I mean, Paris is one of those really romantic cities, and I get the idea of getting swept up in that, but Lorelai went against her better judgment in agreeing to it. She had the instinct that this was the wrong timing, and it was wrong without Rory there, and she was right in the end about all of it. She just once again used a relationship or something exciting as a band-aid for something going wrong in her life, and we'll touch on that a little more in a few proposals. There's more on that. But yeah, she just let the romance and the idea of it sweep her off her feet. And you shouldn't do that. If you're going to enter into a legally binding contract with another human being, maybe think it through a little more.
Like this much. Just this much.
A little bit more.
Yeah. But next up, and we can say that this is the third worst proposal. We're starting to, hit the middle ground in terms of not bad, but like still not great. Next up is Zach and Lane.
It didn't actually hit me until fairly recently, surprisingly, how bad this proposal actually is. Yeah. He does it in public at her place of work. And he comes in and just starts rambling a little bit about, I wake up and I don't feel good. I brush my teeth and I don't feel good. I tried to write a song, but it was coming out too emo.
Yeah.
And he's right. It was entirely too emo. And he just sort of like springs it on her after they've been estranged for weeks, at least. I think Mrs. Kim says in the episode where she like blocks all the windows and pulls out the sake that it's been 6 weeks. And so, it's been maybe 2 months or something since they broke up. They haven't really had any communication. And all of a sudden he's coming here and proposing marriage after royally screwing over the whole band at their showcase, and I'm glad that he tried to make amends and like realized that what he did was wrong. And he made up with Gil and Brian.
Yeah.
I stand them forever, but
but I take issue with not even like a public proposal, but you're doing it at her place of employment.
In the middle of her shift, in front of her boss,
who
she has to shush.
Yeah. And there are other people eating there too. Like, your casual diner might not want to just, be seeing this. They may just want to like just have a quiet meal. Stars Hollow is a small enough town and the people there are friendly enough where they're just like, yeah, we'll just let this play out. It's fine. No one's going to give you any grief over it. And I love how they're just like, we get it. You're not happy. Like, go on. And then he just blurts it out and says, will you marry me? This one ranks a little bit higher though, because Zach did give it not the most thought, but a little, like he gave it some thought.
He at least had a ring ready and knew that he wanted that this was the ultimate goal for him, was to get Lane back and to commit to her forever.
Yeah. I mean, like you make an excellent point. He did have a ring ready. And we get a quicker response from Lane than we do from Lorelai with the past two proposals from Chris and Max. And I think that's also telling where I'll say, like, I don't think that Zach and Lane were ever the right people for each other, but they at least thought they were right for one another themselves. And that's kind of all that matters sometimes. That's kind of all that matters. It's good to have people in your life who can step in if they think like you're not with the right person, but I'll give them points for just acknowledging that they thought they were good enough for one another to enter into that.
Yeah. Although I do take some exception to Lane saying yes immediately and getting a little moony-eyed over it, given the level of douchebaggery that Zach pulled at that gig. And, she just kind of like immediately forgives him and is like, I'm getting married. It feels a little immature. And they get married so quickly. But we see in the revival that they've gone the distance and they're still together and they seem pretty happy. They haven't really hit their goals in terms of musical careers.
No, but I mean, their twin boys seem to be doing well enough. They're happy. They're healthy. They seem to be flourishing and just enjoying life. Zach and Lane seem to be content enough with each other in their marriage. So that's just a win.
Yeah, I think it's a good enough ending for them. But the other thing that gets me about this proposal is that Zach has to go get Mrs. Kim's permission at the end of the day. And so Lane has said yes, but Mrs. Kim still needs to be looped in. And her demand on Zach is to write a hit song, because if he wants to support Lane as a musician in his chosen career path, he needs to be able to be successful and get radio play, get money out of this.
Gotta bring home that bacon.
Gotta make the cheddar.
Yeah.
But the minute he runs into issues and is like, I can't do this, he just gives up. He wants to marry Lane, and he wants to bail pretty quickly on this whole project. And I'm glad that Mrs. Kim pushes him a little bit. But I also love that Mrs. Kim sort of embraces this, and she sets a boundary and she sets a parameter, but she works with him to write that song, go out on a minor chord, and he does. And it's funny because Lane comes in and he's more excited about the fact, he's like, Lane, we wrote a hit song, than the fact that he now has her implicit permission to marry her. But the second proposal is fairly cute as well, where she pulls out the stool and he kneels, and she gives the family heirloom ring, and she's like, keep that one away from the children, it'll scare them.
Yeah, but I also just want to shout out Mrs. Kim here. I don't think that Zach was necessarily ever the partner that she would choose herself for Lane, but she just embraces it and she goes with it and she gives her permission, and then she continues to help them on throughout their marriage and helps out with raising the kids. So just go you, Mrs. Kim. Just really good grandma moment for the kids, really good just support system within the family, just embracing a marriage that is, again, not something that she would have chosen, but she lets it happen.
She recognizes that it's what's going to make Lane happy, and she's okay with that, and she makes it happen. So she gives her the wedding dress and the ring and helps plan everything, and it is kind of a fun wedding.
Yeah, I would go to it.
Yeah. The double barrel Buddhist and Seventh-day Adventist wedding.
It's very unique, if nothing else.
Lane even points that out. She's like, it's memorable.
Yep.
It's memorable. Yep. Oh, next up was one that caused some contention and some debate amongst us, because I would have rated this one higher myself, but Logan and Rory.
Yeah. This one is middle ground where I think it should be. Because I did take issue with a lot of it. And we'll start off with the fact that, again, I don't think that Logan was ever the right man for Rory.
We'll fight this out in March. You better believe that's coming.
Team Jess.
Team Logan.
Yep. So I don't think that, for starters, Logan was the right guy for her. But I take serious issue with when he proposes, which is at her graduation party, after she's just graduated from Yale. And that to me is a huge accomplishment and a huge achievement for Rory. That's a very special and notable day for her. And I don't like the fact that Logan kind of stole that thunder away from her and decided this is the day and the time that I'm going to propose, and diminished what I think is like a really just significant day and moment for her, and something that she should be proud of. But it ends up getting tainted by this proposal, especially because she doesn't say yes.
Yeah, spoiler alert, she doesn't marry Logan. I still say she should have. But, the reason I would have put this a little higher myself was because, they'd been together 3 years, and they were one of the couples on the show that legitimately felt like they were in the right place to get engaged. They'd been together long enough. They'd lived together. They weren't in the middle of a fight when it was happening. It was literally Logan, thinking about this intensely and considering it. He asked Lorelai's permission, which was definitely the right move. And he genuinely wanted to start a life with Rory, and he knew that now she was graduating, she'd be free to go wherever she wanted to take a job. And they had that conversation in Hay Bale Maze about factoring each other into future decisions. And he'd gotten this great opportunity in an up and coming field. We know retrospectively now that in 2007, Silicon Valley, where they would have ended up, was just absolutely booming and would have offered so many opportunities to the both of them.
Yeah.
And so I think he did it with all of the best intentions of actually starting a life with her. And, she was having this moment of doubt about her life and her career, especially after getting turned down for the Reston Fellowship. And she was scared. She didn't know what her life was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was trying to provide some support and stability and say, hey, like, no matter what, I want to be with you and I want us to move forward together. And she all of a sudden seems to have had a change of heart as she was packing up. She seemed happy at the idea. Like when she's packing up her boxes and she pulls out the ring and she has a look at it and, she smiles and she says to him, I love the idea of being married to you, but I just don't know what my life is going to look like. And I'm kind of excited now that the world is my oyster.
Mm-hmm.
So I need like a moment to consider this. I don't blame her for maybe wanting to think it through, just given her stage in life. I think they were both still maybe a little young. Logan's a little older than her and ready to settle down. And he just genuinely loves her. She's the first person that ever made him want to give up his Playboy lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was a sweet gesture. And, he actually made it a proposal. He said, like, he planned it and he had sort of a speech prepared and something ready. He had a beautiful ring and a horse and carriage to take them away from the party at the end of the night. And you're right about the fact that doing it so publicly was wrong, but also, like, do we really think he was expecting her to say no? Do we really think that he expected it to go so poorly? Like, I don't think he did. And so he probably thought, oh, it's great. I have her grandparents and her parents are both here. And it's a big triumphant moment. Like, let's put the capper on this and make this, one of the best days and weeks of her life. And I don't think he saw it backfiring the way that it did, because they had already seemingly had some conversations about, like, hey, let's factor each other in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was ill-advised, but I don't know. I can't necessarily fault him for all of it. I think he had the best of intentions. So I don't want to, totally tear him down for it.
I will agree and give him points for thinking it out and how he was going to actually do it. Even if I disagree with the venue and the time and the place, there was thought and care put into popping that question. The fact that he didn't foresee Rory being hesitant and then eventually saying no concerns me, because it shows that even for all of the conversations that you've had about it, you didn't have enough conversation about it. And you really didn't know where she was at in life right now, just being a fresh college graduate, thinking about, like, what is she going to want to do? And just knowing the fact that Rory's career path has always been her wanting to pursue journalism and a career in that field, she's likely going to have to travel starting out to do that, to be successful. And Logan is essentially just saying, come to California with me. But that's not what Rory wants. She wants to have the world open to her in that moment. And that leads us to the ultimatum that Logan ends up giving Rory, which is, say yes and accept this marriage proposal and come with me to California, or I'm done here.
Yeah. I mean, part of me gets it, though, because they've already done the long distance thing. And trust me, long distance is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone out there who's done that knows that it sucks. And they've already been there for several months of their relationship. And so I don't blame him for not wanting to take a step backwards. He is ready for the future. He wants, like I said, to build a life with her. And it's really hard to do that when she takes a job in Boston or Hartford or Providence and he's in Palo Alto. To make a marriage work, you kind of have to be together most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you can't, like, I can see why when he's ready to take that step, if she's also not, then it says something about her commitment to him and that he doesn't want to proceed if she's not ready to be where he is. And it sucks that their relationship has to end because of it. And obviously we see that has fallout for years in the revival. Yeah. But, like, I mean, imagine if someone gave you the same ultimatum, right? Like, would you be surprised that they don't want to backtrack?
I mean, no, but I would also just be enormously devastated when my no, because that's not what I want and I'm not ready, it means that the relationship comes to an end. That's not what Rory wanted. She didn't want the whole thing to just immediately, we're done here, we're going to go our separate ways in life. Yes, long distance relationships are hard. It takes immense amount of work to make them continue to be successful and work out. But I think she was still willing to put in the effort, knowing that Logan was going to be in California. She didn't know what city she was going to end up in the short term, but I think she would have continued on in the relationship and eventually progressed towards marriage with Logan when she was ready, even if it was just a couple months down the line. But Logan wasn't willing to give her that time. He says it's now or never, and I will flag him for it. I don't think that's a fair thing for him to do.
But on the other side of the coin is, you know, if she's only just starting out in a job and she gets a job somewhere in New England or New York, you know, how soon is she realistically going to be able to get to him if he's going to be, you know, joining a startup and having to put in amounts of time with his own job? Like, there's always got to be sacrifice in a relationship. Someone has to give, someone has to move for the other person. And if Logan has the more stable opportunity with more money, he's not going to want to like easily give that up to go back to working for the Huntsbergers necessarily, because that's not what he wants at the time. And Rory at this time is the more flexible one. And, you know, the San Francisco Bay Chronicle or whatever it's called is a great paper apparently, and would have been a great opportunity for her. I think the issue with California was probably how far it was away from Lorelai, and she wasn't really. But then Rory takes a job on the road and is away from Lorelai for months or years, given the fact that Obama did in fact win. Spoiler alert: Obama won in 2008. So she was probably on the road with him for a long time through that campaign, and so one of them was eventually going to have to give. And yeah, they can both travel and whatnot, but like they predominantly have to be in the same place. And so for her to just be like, well, we're going to do this on my terms and we're just going to do long distance and battle it out until one of us either gives or we break up. When you're ready to commit yourself to someone so fully that you want to get married and you pop that question, I can see not wanting to revert to a place where like things are just absolutely separate and unknown and undefinable in that way, because it's too hard to let that live in limbo for that long, because they really don't know what's up with Rory's career.
But he didn't even give her a chance to figure it out. Give her 6 months. See if she's able to find a job that she loves, and then maybe you consider moving for her. Or if she's not able to find a job in a city that she enjoys, then maybe 6 months down the line, she's like, you know what? My career path is not taking off in the way that I want it to. So I'm a little bit more inclined now to come be where you are, because, you know, I've had 6 months to find work and just life isn't going in the way that I want to. But I think she would have really just appreciated being given that time, and he didn't allow it.
I don't know. I think maybe if they'd had a different kind of conversation about it, where she said, like she put a cap on it. Like maybe she said, can we give this a few months and give it a shot? Like, because that's not how she pitched it. She sort of pitched it as like, I'm gonna do what I want. And I'm not, you know, committing to you one way or the other. We're just going to sort of go back to the way it was when you were in London, you know, sexting and never seeing each other. So I don't know. There might have been a way to reconcile that, but I can understand Logan not wanting it to float like that and not be like so undefined, unfinished, because, you know, it just would leave them both in a position where both of them probably didn't have what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think they maybe should have given it more time. But again, this is a television show and they want drama and they want black and white. They need to have some sort of resolution to it. And ultimately the writers at the time, not Amy and Dan, notably, decided that they wanted Rory to be that wandering free spirit and to not commit to a guy, because, you know, the show was never really technically about the guys or who they ended up with, but it was about them and their paths and what they want to do with their lives, being independent women. So they made a decision writing wise to make it an ultimatum. I think like if they were real people, like if they were friends of yours and they were in that situation, I don't know that it would have been so cut and dry. But I can also understand what they were trying to get at with like, hey, we can't just continue on like this because, you know, I want to be with you. And like I moved back to the US to be closer to you. And we've had all these conversations about what the future might look like. We love each other. We want to do this. Why can't you make any sacrifices for me? So I don't know. It's hard. It's like someone always has to give. And Rory is our main character. So we don't want it to be her. We don't want it to be the woman always capitulating to the man either. And so it feels wrong to ask Rory to settle on her career ambitions, but it doesn't mean she couldn't have had a fulsome career. There's absolutely nothing to say that she couldn't have flourished in California. She was just hemming and hawing about her own life and let it affect her relationship with Logan.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is such a tough one.
Yeah.
It's like, so I can see both sides of it.
Yeah, we really did. There was a significant debate just to formulate this list. And the next couple that we talk about as we move forward, and we're getting more towards the better proposals that we see on the show, there was some serious debate in agreeing on number 1, number 2, number 3. So putting Logan and Rory in the middle ground, we fought on this and we'll continue to fight on it more. But
yeah, we had to really look at each thing and kind of compare them against each other as we were going. But let us know what you think. Drop us a comment and tell us which side you land on, because like it's not a cut or dry question.
No.
And there's so many different perspectives and people probably actually lived through this and may have some insight that we don't have yet. So
yeah, that's true.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
In the meantime, who's next?
Next up, and we're getting now towards this is number 3 on our list. So this would be bronze medal proposal. Luke and Lorelai. And I think your average casual fan, and perhaps even, you know, the Gilmore Girls fan base who are, you know, obsessed with the show like us, would put Luke and Lorelai higher and perhaps even give them top billing. But we did not. We're giving them 3rd place.
Yeah, a lot of people treat Luke and Lorelai as the OTP, and in a lot of ways they are, because you can see it telegraphed from the pilot that they're into each other and that they're going to end up together. And, you know, again, spoiler alert, we know they do in fact end up together. So yeah, and it's such an interesting proposal because it's one of the few that I can think of. Maybe you guys have seen other shows that I haven't where this occurs, but it's one of the few times where a woman proposes to a man. So that makes it interesting. And it's just such an emotional moment already because we've just seen Lorelai coming from her parents' house and watching Rory rather move into the pool house. And she comes to Luke with this problem and doesn't know what to do about it. And he just kicks into dad mode, which is, you know, something she's seen from him multiple times when it comes to Rory. And it just makes her realize how much he cares for both her and Rory, and makes her realize exactly how much she wants him in her life like that full time. And so she just blurts it out. There was absolutely no plan, which I think might be part of the reason it lost some points, was because it was impulsive. And also because it was a bit of a Band-Aid for what was going on in her life. She says it in, I think it's New and Improved Lorelai, where he's like, are you sure you want to celebrate right now? And she says, I just want to feel good. So I promised we would get there. This is yet another time when she uses a relationship or a proposal or something like that to mask other problems and to just sort of drown her emotions in something to distract her. So don't love that.
Don't. But at least with Luke now, we're at what most people believe to be the right man for her, which is, I think, what allows this to be higher up on the list than Max and Chris, even though the impulsivity was still there and she's still trying to band-aid a situation. At least she's doing it with a guy that most people would agree is actually not perfect for her, because I think 2 people are ever perfect for one another, but good, and like, and I don't even like you saying good enough, but just like as close to perfect as you can get.
Right. Yeah. No one will ever meet every single expectation you have. But Luke and Lorelai seem to find a dynamic that works for them,
Mm-hmm.
given who they are as people. It may not look conventional to the rest of us in terms of like, ooh, I would not want a relationship like that. But for them, it seems to work.
Yeah. And I think another reason why we didn't give this one top billing was because, damn, if it didn't take you guys long enough.
It only took you 5 years.
Yeah.
Of that. Well, probably more than that, really. I think they've known each other at least 8.
Since Rory was 8.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So
even if like the chemistry and the attraction wasn't there for all of those years, we get it from season 1. And so many people, you know, have said to us and say throughout, like, you know, the fandom base, like, why is she dating other men when Luke is right there? And they're not wrong. The chemistry is written in from the get-go, and that's what's meant to be seen. But Lorelai continues to date other men. Luke does too. Women. Luke dates other people. They both date other people before eventually realizing that, you know, yeah, they're meant to be together, and, you know, they are all in on each other. But I think the time that it took for them to really realize that, when it should have been so much more transparent to them as it was to everybody else, is why we give them 3rd place.
Yeah. I'm just going to take this moment to point out, man, this show was so cishet. Drink. Yeah. The other thing I find interesting about their proposal, too, is how everyone else reacts to it. Because they all assume that Luke did it. The entire town is like, how'd you do it? And all that. And Kirk gives him grief when he's buying the ring. He's like, oh, you know, Lorelai really stole that moment from you. I'm not going to let Lulu steal this moment from me.
Okay, Kirk.
Again, these gender-bound, cis-het rules and expectations that are imposed on the relationship by other people. And it's like, shut up, who cares? They're happy. Just let them have it. So, yeah, that was an interesting one. And then we also get sort of a second proposal between them later, if you will. They lived together for like consistently for 9 years up until the revival, and they're still not married. And then we have Lorelai going to do Wild, and she uses that. Wow, I know. Are you book or movie? Always book. Yeah, and she uses this opportunity to work through some emotional roadblocks that she'd been holding on to, because I don't even think she knew exactly why she and Luke weren't married yet, but she was just getting all this pressure and all these expectations put on her from outside parties, and she didn't really care so much and didn't recognize why they couldn't take that step, I think, until she worked through some of her family stuff. And she comes back after a few days because she keeps losing her permit.
Yeah.
And she goes on this whole rant to him, and he's like, stop, like, I am in this. I will do whatever it takes. We cannot break up again. I will not lose you. And then she's like, I think we should get married.
And it's a really unfortunate catalyst for it, but I think Richard's death is really what drove her to finally be like, I just need to be all in on Luke in the same way that he's been all in on me. And it sucks that it took her father dying to get her to that moment of clarity.
Yeah.
But I can understand it, because I think she realizes, I just lost my father. I'm dealing with an immense amount of grief. I'm seeing how this is impacting my mother. You know, life is short. I need to just, you know, if I am seeking out this happiness, I need to finally allow myself to have it. And that means being with Luke. And so that's where I think she has all of that introspection that we see in the revival when she does her Wild bit. And she's able to come back home knowing, like, yes, I'm finally all in on this. And again, just sad that that's what it took to get her there. But sometimes that's just how it happens.
Yeah. And this time it was more of a conversation instead of something that was blurted out, where she's like, I think we should get married. And he just agrees immediately, because I think he feels the same way. And he even goes and gets the original ring out. He's been holding on to it all of these years, waiting for the right moment, maybe. And I'm like, why didn't you do that sooner? God, these two, they just took way too long to get it together.
Yeah.
But, you know, in the end, we really do see them get married and hopefully live happily ever after. But yeah, it felt more mature the second time, where they had spent all that time living together and ensuring that the relationship was the right thing and exactly what they wanted. And I mean, slight flag on the play for Lorelai basically planning the whole thing without Luke's involvement and saying, it's happening November 5th in the town square, we're having hot dogs. Like, maybe ask him what he wants or make sure he's on the same page before you go ahead and do that. But
yeah,
we know it turns out okay for them.
Yeah. I mean, and what would allow us to really know if their marriage has been successful and if they're going the distance is a revival.
Amy, I know you're watching this. Please, we beg of you.
All the time.
Season 2 of the revival.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Yeah. Let's move along though. We're gonna go to our silver medal.
Silver medal. And this was, again, one of those contentious ones where I was like, I was about to put this like next to last, right after Lorelai and Max, because it's like so weird to me. But it's one that we don't actually see happen on screen. It's an anecdote that we get in Let the Games Begin, which is the story of how Richard proposed to Emily. Richard and Emily, I guess, take second to top billing.
Yep.
Because they're meant for each other.
Yeah, I mean, we fought on this for a long time. This was actually one of our more contentious ones too. But what put me like just bumping them up on the list was that their marriage lasts. It goes the distance. They're married for over 50 years before Richard passes. And the marriage wasn't perfect, Penelon lot.
Separation.
Yep. But marriage takes work. No matter who you're with, no matter, there's going to be ups and downs to marriage, but that's just, it's a part of any and all marriages and it's work. But for all of the times that they are separate, that they fight, they go the distance and they make it work. And there are moments throughout the seasons that you can see that they do genuinely love each other. And it's not just forced compatibility or expectations that were put on them from their parents, which, we don't know what Emily and Richard were like as teenagers or young adults. Maybe they were maybe this was orchestrated, like with their parents sort of introducing them to each other. Who knows? We don't have context for that.
Well, we know that Trex hates Emily and tried to talk him out of marrying her the night before the wedding.
Yeah.
Welcome to the carbon copy.
Yeah. We've said this, that Richard is absolutely Trix's son.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. But that's an excellent point. Like, the mother-in-law didn't want Emily in the picture. And the fact that they went ahead and got married anyway, again, they did, I believe, truly and genuinely love each other in the way that you need to have a marriage work.
Yeah. And clearly they did make it work. So, but I thought it was weird because, I get why Richard was being evasive with her and not telling her plans for the holidays because he wanted to invite her to meet his family. And then he wanted to propose after that. So he had a plan. He had a ring. He was all ready to do it. He even had it in that moment with him where they were at Yale. And the reason I wanted to mark it a little lower was because, once again, it came out of a passive-aggressive fight where, Emily was being obstinate about everything, classic, and Richard just didn't want to show his hand because he was trying to plan a nice surprise for her. And so they were fighting. And as an effort to stop that, he pulls out the ring box, shows it to her, and she says, fine. I mean, granted, it does feel entirely emblematic of their entire personalities and their whole marriage.
It does.
So it tracks for them for that to be how it happened. But to me, that is like just the absolute least romantic proposal ever.
Yeah, but I don't even think that, and we've talked about this, Richard was never a romantic individual. I would have been surprised had we seen a proposal where he actually thought it out and, brought in swans and just a beautiful ambiance or setting and gets down on one knee and says, Emily, you're the love of my life. Please be mine forever. I would have been like, Richard?
Who are you and what have you done with Richard?
That you?
Yeah. What alien abducted you? And, it was obviously a Skrull. Yeah.
So, like you said, it just, this tracks for me, even if it's not romantic, even if it's not this grandiose gesture, even if it's stemming from just, a semi-heated moment. I believe it. This is how I would have envisioned it somewhat going down for them. And you said it perfectly. The response of Emily just being like, fine. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, it does speak to the fact that they are sort of more practical and almost transactional in their relationship. The fact that it was such an emotionless moment almost. Although, Emily later does tell stories about being really excited to marry him and trying on her dress every night. So it's clear that they did love each other.
Yeah.
But I think there was sort of a practicality to their relationship that lies beneath the surface where they were both expected to marry certain types of people and they had found that type of person, at least in each other's eyes. And yeah, it sort of sapped the romance. Like, they do love each other, though. It's not like they, it's not like an arranged marriage or something where it's truly just pure transaction. There was love and romance and swooning there. And so the fact that the proposal lacked any of that is a little sad, but also it doesn't seem to have sapped the romance from their marriage later. They still sort of maintained that level of transactionality in their relationship with the gender dynamics and how their relationship played out. But you could tell that despite not having, you could tell that he wanted to do it in such a way where he probably did just want to do it privately, down on one knee, and say the right things because he was planning it and he had it ready. But was sort of robbed of his moment. But
I don't think he minded, though.
I don't think he minded. I think it worked out for them regardless. But I don't know. When I thought back on it, I was like, this is so weird. And again, stop proposing to your girlfriend because you're in a fight. Don't do it.
Just, again, take note, anybody and everybody.
Yeah. So Emily and Richard, you are lucky you are getting this award, your silver medal, because it was a little effed up, but you made it work.
Yep. As we move on to our gold medal and our just our number one top billing for best proposal. This is one that we actually agreed upon should take the top spot. We had to work out number 2, number 3, number 4, but we both pretty quickly agreed, they're going to get top billing here.
Yeah. And
tell us who it is.
It wasn't a perfect proposal. It still has its issues. They all had their issues. So we were just sort of like lesser of the evils with this list. But if you know anything about the show, you know that the gold medal goes to Suki and Jackson.
Cheers to them.
Cheers to Suki and Jackson.
Well.
They're still living it up in their farmhouse, eating soil to determine its mineral composition.
Sleeping with their vegetables.
Sleeping with the zucchinis. Teaching their kids to garden and play and have fun. I love their proposal. It's so cute. It stems out of kind of a rough situation.
Yes, it does.
There was some bad communication on their part in terms of, taking that next step in their relationship to live together. And the fact that Jackson just sort of assumed Suki would pick up what he was laying down and would be like, yeah, let's live together. But then she doesn't, and he gets kind of sulky and passive aggressive about it. Not a good start.
Yeah. We'll backtrack a little bit because I want to give just a little more context here for why this was problematic, even though it does take the top spot. Jackson wasn't going into the day that he proposed thinking this is the day that I'm going to propose. He comes to Suki saying, the lease is up on my apartment. Do you think I should renew it? What are your thoughts on that? And yeah, I think that Suki probably should have been a little more perceptive to understand what he's truly trying to ask there, but she wasn't. And I think he, in that moment, should have realized she's not picking up what I'm putting down. Let me try and communicate this a little bit better. He was just thinking I'm going to ask my girlfriend to move in with me. And when she didn't understand what he was trying to put forth there, he gets frustrated, and then he just skips over that step and just goes to, well, let's actually just get married. I think we should get married.
Yeah. Maybe should have lived together first. I'm a proponent of such things in general for people. I know that there's some advice out there that says don't do it, but I'm like, how do you know that you're going to last in a marriage with someone if you don't know their daily routines and don't know how to kind of work through those conflicts with that person? It's a huge portion of compatibility in my brain. And I'm like, probably should have figured that been out first, maybe. But
Yeah.
again, we know it turned out okay. I think, they really were meant for each other.
Mm-hmm.
The produce guy and the chef really seemed to click.
Yeah.
So it turned out okay. But just, I love that whole episode. A Tisket a Tasket is just one of the best of the series, I think.
Yeah.
And it encapsulates everything good about Stars Hollow and the show and its cozy vibes.
Mm-hmm.
The drama that ensues, but also the fact that, these two really were meant for each other by design because it's fiction.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love the moment as it goes down because they're just sitting there on a picnic blanket. It's so sweet and genuine. And I do believe it comes from a place in Jackson's heart that does just want to be with Suki forever.
Yeah.
And, I don't think it was like an impulsive decision like Lorelai's, where it was meant as okay, I'm just using this as a bit of a distraction and I'm just off the cuff. I think it was more purposeful than that, more genuine. As I said, it's just this spring of emotion where he's like, I just want to be with you. And it just came out where he's like, I think we should get married. And he does it in such an offhanded way just to throw her off. And she's like, are you pregnant?
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite moments and lines from the whole thing. It's so cute.
Yeah. Suki definitely didn't see it coming. So she had a moment of just being flummoxed, but but it wasn't even a moment. It was just like a quick second of like, you're asking me to marry you? And he's just like, yeah. And there's no hesitation after that where she just gives him an immediate yes. And she's like, yep.
Yeah.
Here we go.
It's one of the few immediate, genuine yeses, like unencumbered absolutelys that happens in the show. I guess the other being kind of like Zach and Lane. But also that one's problematic as we've already been through.
Yeah.
So this one is less so. It's the least problematic of all of them. And, Suki and Jackson had their issues and they did. They struggled to communicate at times and to be mature about certain things. But they went the distance. And it seems like they're happy as of the revival. So they were doing something right.
Yeah. I could see the two of them just going the distance like Emily and Richard did.
Yeah.
Where they just end up being married for 50, 60 years, however long, that lasts until, one of them passes. But I see them being together forever.
I do too. And that's part of the reason they took the top slot. So, and then we have a few wrap up topics that we wanted to mention. We have one honorable mention, pun completely intended. Honor and Josh. Again, we don't see the proposal happen. By the time we meet Honor, it has already occurred. But I found it interesting because it does actually play an important plot role for Logan and Rory's relationship, because Logan seems to be one of the first people she tells, at least one of the first people in her family, because she knows the rest of the Huntsbergers are going to be very judgmental. And so
Huntsbergers judgmental?
Never. So she, convinces Lanny to let her in, and she waits for Logan and pops the news to him, and he's so excited for her. And then we have that fateful dinner where everyone tells Rory that she's practically trash, comparatively speaking. Yeah. So that's great.
You're not good enough for this family.
Yeah. But, her engagement party is where they steal the yacht. And her wedding is where Rory finds out about the cheating. So we'll have a whole discussion on that eventually, too, because that's a meaty topic that I'm really excited. And I have some very specific opinions. So that'll be fun. But yeah, so Honor's whole trajectory with engagement and marriage has a surprising impact on Logan and Rory. So I thought they were at least worth mentioning. And then last but not least, the proposal we would have liked to see the most,
but that we never got, Paris and Doyle. I actually don't believe that these two were ever long-term right for each other. I think short-term, they had enough to keep it going and meet each other's needs, at least for the first few months, the first few years. But I just feel like as they found their own career paths, and just because Paris is so determined and motivated to garner her own success, it's not that Doyle would be unencouraging of it, because I think he would be, but I think almost that just Paris is too strong of a person for him.
Yeah, perhaps her intensity is something that drove a wedge between them at some point. We don't actually see the devolution of their marriage either. We come into the revival hearing that they're getting a divorce.
Mhm.
So we go from them, you know, happily riding off into the sunset and traveling to India at the end of the series to inferring that they got engaged and married and had 2 kids and are now no longer married. So we didn't actually get to see it play out, any of that dramatic stuff for them.
Mhm.
So we don't know exactly what happened, but we can kind of tell that, you know, Doyle had his own ideas and Paris was kind of judgmental about them. Like, he's a screenwriter now, Rory.
Mm.
He's flying out to the coast as if this isn't a coast.
Yeah.
Well, Connecticut's not exactly a coast, guys.
Yeah, and maybe that seems like it probably was one of the reasons why the marriage floundered. Because if Paris is just being judgmental on the career path that Doyle ends up choosing, that's really dismissive, and like, that's not okay within any marriage. And screenwriting is an admirable profession. Why are you shitting on that?
Exactly. As long as you're a good screenwriter.
Yeah. I mean, you can, you know, be a bad one just because you're a bad writer, but the profession itself is still noteworthy.
Yeah.
So I don't like Paris doing that. And yeah, for multiple reasons that we're not going to like list or talk about, I can see why this marriage didn't work. But I would have liked to have seen the proposal and how that played out.
Yeah, that would have been great. Yeah. But I guess that kind of wraps us up for questions popped.
Yep.
During this span of the series.
Again, if you agree with our list, let us know. If you have any differing opinions and you think that some of the proposals should have been ranked higher, should have been ranked lower, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well. You can also email us and talk to us on social media. We have all of those accounts linked in the description below. But what have we got coming up next?
Ooh, next will be our season 1 wrap up.
Ooh, we got there.
We are through the first season.
Congratulations. We're doing
See, the champagne works on multiple levels.
Yes, it does. Yeah, so come back and join us for that. We'll be talking about our favorite moments from season 1, our least favorite moments, who we thought had the best character arcs, who we thought really fell flat. But we'd love to engage with you as well as we wrap that up. In the meantime, go back and watch some of our old videos if you're waiting for content while you wait for that to happen. And always do the YouTube things, just like this video, subscribe to our channel so that you can stay up to date with us. But that being said, we'll see you next Friday night for dinner. Cheers.
Ciao.